Welcome back to Definitely Not Definitive. I'm Ken.
And I'm Bethany.
We're just a couple of wild and crazy kids in love that love some Wild Card Wednesdays.
It's Wild Card Wednesday!
Yeah, so for this Wild Card Wednesday, we're going back to Pokemon, and we're checking out every fighting type of Pokemon explained by Loxin and Noggin. And if you want all of our Pokemon reactions, we got a playlist for you. Are you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Alright, we finally made it to the fighting type in our animal fighting simulator. So if fighting type exists, does that mean that the other types don't naturally fight? Well, ethics aside, we're here to figure out which Pokemon should and really shouldn't be fighting type, as well as explain why each fighting type Pokemon is, well, fighting type. So first things first, we all know a lot of Pokemon that are fighting type fit that typing pretty well, or at least, you know, all of them fight. It's in their blood. In fact, all Pokemon fight, save a few special snowflakes over here. And no, I'm not talking about Cryogonal. First off, let's go over Pokemon whose typing fits rather well. And as always, I'm going to split up this huge list of Pokemon because, good God, there are too many Pokemon these days. And with all Pokemon battling, I think the word fighting really starts to lose its meaning. So what is the fighting type exactly?
Good question.
Well, it is assumed that the Pokemon in question either fight similarly to human fighting techniques, or the Pokemon's moves are the basis of martial arts or fighting styles humans use in the Pokemon world. Coming from the Japanese translation of the type Kakuto, or fighting fist, we can infer that it means the Pokemon battle in a human or humanoid way. And we all know that learning a fighting technique takes a lot of discipline and training. But some Pokemon in this fighting type really are just strong, but overall
just a
don't
Froggo?
follow a form or style of fighting. So, let's get down to business and find out who are not fighting types, or you know, they actually are. Not saying they, because obviously, don't be stupid. Which ones shouldn't be, and why are the ones that are that way?
One word before the monkeys.
Our first set of Mons are Pokemon whose fighting styles most closely resemble those from the Far East, the lands of China, Japan, Indonesia, and the surrounding area. This group of Pokemon includes Hitmonlee, Makuhita, Hariyama, Mindfu, Mindchao, Sock, Throw, Meditite, Medicham, Marshadow, Monferno, Infernape, Pignite, and Emboar. Oh, Hitmonlee, our favorite Dalzim impersonator, based around kicks that have its legs extend because they're springs apparently. It's apparent that this guy follows the teachings of Taekwondo. It's even in his name. Hitmonlee is based off of Bruce Lee, a famous martial artist and actor known for his kicks. And this referential name extends even to its Japanese name of Sawamular, named after the Japanese kickboxer Tadashi Sawamura, who was pretty much the first mainstream kickboxer in Japan. No other Pokemon really follows the strict rules of Taekwondo, although many of them do still kick, as there are quite a few that can learn jump kick, high jump kick, and so on. But let it be known that Hitmonlee is the master. Mindfu and Mindchao are small weasel-like creatures that use elegant moves and quick movements that burst into a fury of blows. While Mindfu's style and stance are that of a generic kung fu fighter, Mindchao's use of whips and shukshu, the long sleeve-like fur on its arms, gives off a general feeling of kung fu as well, but it also adds elements of Taekwondo. And I know, I just said that Hitmonlee was the only one, and that's still kind of true. A lot of these Pokemon bleed into each other's turf in terms of style, and that's because there are only 43 fighting type moves and 57 fighting type Pokemon. So they gotta share, obviously. Next up are Makuhita and Hariyama. These two heavyweights love to bust numbskulls with their powerful punches, and they can really take a beating. I'm sure you've guessed what fighting style they're based off of, and yeah, it's kickboxing. No, it's sumo wrestling. In fact, their names are just odd misspellings of Makushita, the third highest division in sumo wrestling, and Makuuchi being the highest rank. Sock and Throw, whom I named Sock and Right Sock respectively in my playthrough, are two odd fellows. I mean, they just wear full-on clothes. Where they find perfectly Pokemon-sized geese beats me. In fact, that might be a video idea.
They have a tailor.
Ooh, I gotta write that one down real quick. Where the heck do Pokemon get their clothes? I mean, it's probably been done before, but, you know, originality is dead. Back to the duo. Despite their similarities in looks, they are quite different in terms of fighting styles. Throw, as you guessed, likes to throw things, and thus his fighting style is based off of judo. He enjoys... no. needs to toss opponents larger than
It
himself.
changes spells as
Sokka,
it
on
gets
the
stronger.
other hand, uses
Cool.
his hands to punch things in a karate
Tiny Bolts
style.
gets him- Bells gets him pumped
That's
up.
what he uses. Karate. Their one goal in life is to create the greatest karate chop in the world, hence why they live alone in the forest, so they can punch trees. Next up are Medidite and Medicham. Now, unlike other fighting type Pokemon, these creatures don't necessarily follow a strict fighting technique per se, but they are still fighting type for a good reason. Why is that, you ask? Well, they are based off of yoga. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yoga's not a martial art. And you're right. What yoga is a complex stretching workout. And in some cultures, yoga is used to elevate your inner strength. Through intense meditation, someone would be able to achieve a higher understanding, which they would be able to use to see what their opponents would do before they do them, which is just pretty much the Pokemon move Foresight, which both of these can learn. Medicham is said to have thorough yoga training. It gained the psychic power to predict its foe's next move, and it elegantly avoids attacks with dance-like steps, then launches a devastating blow in the same motion. While these may not actually be true fighting styles in terms of prowess, in finesse they clearly show the ability to battle it out. Also, a psychic fighting type is a really strong combo, at least in terms of offense. And if you had to link them to a fighting style, I would say they most closely resemble the various fighting styles used by Shaolin monks. Monkeying around as always is Monferno and Infernape, but instead of just
Monferno.
monkeying around, these simians seem
Great
to be
name.
skilled in fighting. But more relevantly, they are based off of monkey kung fu. You know, that thing from Kung Fu Panda. Kung fu fighting like monkeys, it's pretty simple. And you'd be a tad wrong. You see, there are quite a number of fighting styles that incorporate monkey style.
Okay.
As to say,
Did not know that.
using all of your limbs, like a tail. Infernape's fighting style, judging by its design, is more based off of Sun Wukong's mythic fighting style, the Monkey King. But it could also be based off of Crazy Monkey Defense, which is a boxing style that shares elements with Muay Thai, which is also known as the Art of Eight Limbs, based off of the use of fists along with elbows, knees, and shins. A lot of limbs coming at you all at once. Other starters on the eastern side of things are Pignite and Embor. Similarly to Infernape's line, Embor and company are based off
Pignite's
of Chinese
tiny,
myth. Using the
chopper.
tale of the journey to the west, they seem to be based off of the pig demon, Zhu Baji. Many characteristics from this character can be seen in Embor, like, as the Pokedex states, it cares deeply for its friends. Also, he's a pig. That kinda gives it away. But unfortunately, there isn't much information about how they fight. They do have design elements that resemble a wrestling singlet or suit, and Embor could be seen as a mix of Greek and Chinese designs. Chinese wrestling, or shuai jiao, does share similarities with a boar. The main idea is to knock the opponent down. In fact, it was so popular that some armies are said to have used it during combat in the past, rushing into combat and charging the enemy with horned helmets much like a boar or bull. And finally, in this group of Eastern fighting styles is Marshadow. You wouldn't think it, but he's fighting type. In
Marshadow?
fact, he's the only ghost fighting Pokemon. How a ghost could punch you, I don't know. But he can, so you better watch out. Especially when he shifts into
Maximum overdrive!
Zenith mode. Based off of Hawaiian night marchers, shadowy figures of deceased warriors that march from dusk till dawn, they were composed of many different types of warriors, but most commonly they trained in the art of Kapu Kuia Lua, a form of Hawaiian hand-to-hand combat that was also used by many Pacific Islanders from all over the Pacific Islands. The general principle of this fighting style is focused on bone breaking and other techniques that include open water warfare, which makes sense because, you know, the Pacific Islanders are kinda on
Yeah.
islands surrounded by water. Marshadow could also be based off of the idea of shadow boxing, a technique where one practices fighting using their shadow as a guide on how their form looks. And I think that does it for the true Eastern fighting styles. For the next group, let's go to the other side of the world, the boxers of the West. Think of Mike Tyson for a minute, then imagine him as a humongous Pokemon with 4 arms. Yeah, you're terrified now, but he'd fit in perfectly with these guys. So I guess he could be tamed by a 10-year-old with the power of friendship. And that's all he truly wanted, wasn't it? I'm getting sidetracked. Back to the Pokemon. This group includes Tyrogue, Hitmonchan, Machop, Machoke, Machamp, Gallade, Hawlucha, Crabrawler, and Crabominable. I'm just gonna start with the easy ones here. Tyrogue and Hitmonchan. Like Hitmonlee, they are based off of famous fighters. Or at least Hitmonchan is. Get out of here, Tyrogue. While Hitmonchan's name is based off of Jackie Chan, famous Asian martial artist and movie star, his moves and style seem to say something else. In fact, his focus on punching, along with, you know, the boxing gloves and the boxing boxing outfit kind of give away his style quite quickly. That is to
it a
say,
boxing outfit?
he's a boxer. He even only fights
he's
in
wearing like a
3-minute
cheerleader
intervals, the same as tournament boxing rules. And similarly to Hitmonlee, his name in Japanese is based off of a famous Japanese boxer, Hiroyuki Ebihara. Tyrogue is more of a mystery here.
Nice.
Being a baby Pokemon, it hasn't had much time to figure out what it wants to do in its life. I know, buddy. I know, it's hard. While you're still young and inexperienced, you're expected to know what you want to do until you die. Life's rough. But his stance is all too classic. You see, way back, and I'm talking way back, the Greeks loved to fight, but not hurt each other, because they all loved each other, everyone, and they wanted to
Kratos.
see who was best without actually causing a ton of harm. So they made a whole series of sports out of this, and that was called the Olympics. One of the oldest forms of fighting in the Olympics was Greco-Roman wrestling, a mixture of both Greek and Roman forms of wrestling, but
Yeah,
with rules to make it even more of a challenge, like disallowing grabs from below the belt, rendering trips non-legal. Let's take a look at the modern Greco wrestler. We can see his starting stance, and now let's put that right next to Tyrogue's official art. See the
Yeah, that was
similarities?
called a Greco.
But Tyrogue is a bit of a jack of all trades here, as he can evolve into 3 different fighting styles depending on his stats at the time of evolving. I want more Pokemon like that. Next, we have the Machop,
He also looks like he's
Machoke,
wearing
and
more of a
Machamp
wrestling
line.
uniform.
Now, I know what you're thinking, but Loxton, they're based off of bodybuilders. Show muscles are rarely useful. And you're right, it's all about that core strength. But just like with superheroes, the Pokemon world also disagrees with you. It states that Machamp loves to build its muscles, and it trains in all styles of martial arts to become even stronger. And then for Machamp, it states that Machamp is known as the Pokemon that has mastered every kind of martial art. So I'd like to say that this very well may be the best fighting type Pokemon there is. Hands down. All 4 of them. And I'm not just saying that because the Pokedex may agree with me, because as it turns out, Machamp is way overpowered in these Pokedex entries. He is the superpower Pokemon after all. It's stated that he can punch people way over the horizon, and punch over 1,000 times in 2 seconds. And even before it evolves, its muscles are harder than steel. Man. First gen Pokemon are crazy. Hawlucha, the Pokemon I thought was going to take Ash to the top, but he let me down. Anyway, Hawlucha is based off of a hawk fighting like a luchador. You know, flying presses and such. Luchadors hail from Mexico. Well, authentic ones do. They practice lucha libre, which basically means free fight or free-for-all. There are not very many rules in this fighting style, at least not compared to Greco wrestling, though this wrestling is much more fantastic to watch, with many entertainers becoming luchadors. While the sport has garnered more flair and pizzazz,
I think he, like,
we
skinned
can
his
see
nuts
that
to hit his
Hawlucha
face.
uses this fantastical flying fighting technique. The Pokedex even states that it overwhelms opponents with quick moves, but
Looked like he was sticking his
sometimes
tongue out, but I
it
think
showboats
he's
for
just
too long when using a special
makeup.
move, and it gets itself into a pinch.
moving
Well,
for some-
speaking of pinch, next we have Crabrawler, and I know what you're thinking. Shouldn't he be in the next category, the Brawler category? Wait, how would you have even known that? Well, now you're thinking it because I told you about the next category, so... Well, you'd be wrong. You see, Crabrawler loves to fight by punching repeatedly with its boxing glove-like claws, something we've seen before with Hitmonchan. And in fact, the Pokedex references the fights between Crabrawlers as boxing matches. And it seems that Crabominable, a Pokemon that I almost
Crabominable.
forgot about in this video because I hate it, it continues to use its large claws as boxing gloves. Except now they are
wow.
hairy and have stupid paw prints. Well, I'm done with that Pokemon now, thank
No!
God. Never have to touch it again until the Ice-type video. And finally, we have Gallade. At first, I was considering putting him into the eastern section as he practically uses Tonfas, a weapon normally used with Okinawan martial arts, with origins being around southeast China. But the Pokedex loves to toy with me here. It specifically states that it fights using its elbows as swords. And what style uses short swords, especially gallantly? Well, in general, the European military of the Middle Ages. Remember, fighting back then was life or death. People just didn't faint, and they used what they had to win. Block their sword and then deliver a nice good punch in their midsection, hence why light armor started to appear. In terms of why Gallade is fighting type, I would say he's based off of short sword hand-to-hand combat, which was very much a part of European history. And you could possibly also add fencing into this, but with the swords on the elbows. So that does it for Western fighting styles. There may be more, but those were the ones that I found while researching. And Western is quite a broad thing to say, so take it with a grain of salt. Next up are the Brawler Pokemon. These Pokemon are fighting type Pokemon who love fighting and are very good at raw, muscular output. But they don't necessarily fight in your typical, well-trained fashion. Think of these guys as your typical street brawler, eager to fight, and has the power to do so, but not much training as far as fluid, talented moves go. To be honest, they may not even be fighting type, or at least shouldn't be, as they lack discipline or an art of fighting, regularly resorting to tricks or, again, their raw power to win battles. These Pokemon are Pancham, Pangoro, Timburr, Girder, Conkeldurr, Scraggy, and Scrafty. So starting off with Pancham and Pangoro, not quite what you'd expect from large bears.
Pancham
it seems
just looks
Pancham has its fighting type
so
due to its
devious.
lifestyle of hanging out with Pangoro.
Mischievous.
In fact, Pangoro is a bad influence on the poor little dude. Based off of Bancho, or Japanese street thug leaders, with Panchams being the impressionable youth that become juvenile delinquents, these guys fight using
they have blonde
dirty
hair for
tricks and
juvenile
such, earning their place in fighting type due to their street fighting style. Timburr, Girder, and Conkeldurr, or just the Triple Durs as I call them, should really not be fighting type either, I suppose. Based off of Muscle Man carnies and construction workers, this trio's only real feat is being strong. It isn't until Conkeldurr that we see the truth come out. It is, in fact, that they have created their own fighting style using heavy, near their maximum lifting capabilities, objects that they swing around as weapons. The Pokedex states that rather than relying on their own force, they master moves that utilize the centrifugal force of spinning concrete. So while a weak reason for being fighting type, they still are a bit more than what meets the eye. Scraggy and Scrafty, unlike the previous Pokemon, are scrawny guys that rely on dirty fighting much like the street gangs of the West, but without the guns or drugs. They've got saggy pants, the mohawks, the hoodies, and the general tough guy attitude. Not necessarily fighting type, but really no other typing would seem to fit these dudes. The fighting type may be based off of their names, coming from Scrappy, referring to its predisposition towards fighting. But don't you let their small stature fool you. Scrafty are able to break huge cinder blocks with just their kicks, I guess earning themselves a spot in the fighting type category. And now, we've reached the beginning of the end of the list, so I'll try to speed things along. Final category is things I couldn't fit into other categories. In other words, other, or miscellaneous. Here we have Pokemon that are fighting type for good reasons, but also for bad reasons. They're kind of mixed, but their origins are all over the place. First up is Hitmontop. He's spinning in first with his Afro-Brazilian fighting style of capoeira. This style is very, well, stylish.
Yeah.
It's fighting while
It's a very cool
incorporating
fighting style.
many spins and dance maneuvers. While very much a fighting style, so Hitmontop is certainly deserving of the fighting type, this style originates from all over the place, so it could have gone into either of the other categories. It's found all over South America, Africa, and even the East, and it has since spread to becoming an aerobic workout that makes me tired just looking at. Riolu and Lucario are two flagship Pokemon that are quite powerful. We touched on them earlier in the Steel-type video, but their fighting style may not be what you would guess. They use Egyptian boxing. In fact, structured boxing was believed to have originated from Egypt, as it was a common pastime to watch people punch each other. Again, I could have put them into either of the first two categories, but decided that Egypt would get its own section here. Also, I just love how that works out, because Egypt loves jackals, and Lucario's a jackal thing. Furry. Now for some less obvious fighting types. Breloom is a stretchy mushroomed raptor that smells bad. Also, it's a
Basically Toad.
kangaroo?
Does it give you an extra life?
Sort of?
Yeah, she's the
Kangaroo
extra
raptor?
life Toad.
Mushroom? Which is where it gets its fighting type from. Based off of kangaroos loosely, who do square up all the time, these massive marsupials can deliver debilitating kicks. Although Breloom learns more punch moves than kick moves. In fact, its Pokedex entry states that its short arms stretch out when it throws punches, and its technique is equal to that of pro boxers, gaining its fighting type easily. Heracross is based off of the rhinoceros beetle found in Japan. Very popular. These beetles will fight any other large beetle by lifting its opponent and throwing them with their horns.
It's like
in Genshin Impact when they had the beetle fight.
Small feet,
Yeah.
almost like a bug form of judo. And Mega Heracross keeps up with this theme, although it looks a bit more like a Hercules beetle now, which is also known for being a very heavy lifter. In fact, Japan has tournaments for these beetles where they fight in cute little arenas, and there are whole sets of rules and such. Combusken, Blaziken, and Mega Blaziken, of course, are blazing chickens based off of Taiwanese cockfighting roosters, who boast very long, strong legs, and they even stand upright and have leg feathers just like Blaziken to boot. Also known as Shamo chickens in Japan, these poultry pack a powerful kick. Ha, you thought I was gonna say punch because of all the P's, didn't you? I got you! While they aren't inherently martial artists, they do know their own form of fighting style. And that's all it really takes to be a fighting type, it seems. Also, you know, they are a fire starter Pokemon, so they had to be fighting type. Huh. Others in this other category are Mega Lopunny, but just the Mega. The other, more normal form of Lopunny is just normal. Generic, you could say. It's a rabbit. But Mega Lopunny is different. It's taken a defense class at the local YMCA. A jazzercise self-defense class to be exact. And no,
Wow.
I am not kidding. Just look at their hair scrunchies. I wouldn't be surprised to see those coming straight from the 80s. But in reality, the Pokedex explains that the Mega Energy awakened some long dormant power,
Super
so it's
Saiyan.
able to use these long ears as whips. So while not necessarily a true fighting type, it seems that it has some form of style and technique in its blood. However that works. Other normal fighting types include Meloetta in her Pirouette form, based mainly off of her ability to dance fight. But we only see this form of Meloetta after it uses its signature move, Relic Song. So it
I
must
thought her
be
hair looked like
her
sheet
long,
music.
dormant style that it uses in its times of need. Possibly the music calms and clears its mind of thoughts to give it clarity to see the opponent's attacks. Another idea is that it is similar to Hitmontop and uses a sort of dance fighting technique, but it's not quite a true fighting type in the end, as it returns to normal, which I suppose is good, not actually being fighting type outside of battle. Anyways, back to normal Pokemon, or normal fighting type, not back to fighting type Pokemon. I'll just say that. Next up are Hakamo'o and Koma'o. They actually are interestingly complex, these two. You see, at first glance, it looks like they are just dragons with red boxing gloves, and fair because, I mean, that's what they are. But if you dig a little deeper, you can find some more reasons why these guys are fighting type, especially Hakamo'o. If we take the name apart, we can get Haka, atop of Maori war dance. Well, honestly, it is used for more than just war, but on top of being a type of war dance from a warrior culture, the Pokedex also states that Koma'o specializes in uppercuts, a typical fighting move. Chestnut. I had a hard time figuring out where I was gonna put Chestnut. Really, Chestnut's secondary typing could easily be Steel instead, as it is resistant to, oh, I don't know, bombs? That's even in the Pokedex entry. It states that if it covers its face with its fists, it can withstand bombs. Who goes around and just bombs Pokemon? Does that mean there are terrorists like ISIS in the Pokemon world? Imagine the amount of Voltorbs they go through on a weekly basis. Voltorbs and C4. Chestnut is based off of a heavily armored knight, someone who is chivalrous and cares deeply for their friends, and will put itself in harm's way to save them. Also, being able to tank a bomb with just your fists seems to me like it's training its arms quite regularly. And now, while that is a weak connection, it's all I really got as for why it's fighting type, other than it's what it needed to be for the other starters of that gen to be their respective typings. At least the fire starter wasn't fighting this time, so it's a nice
tongue as like a
change.
scarf.
Next up are some oddball Pokemon. We have the Swords of Justice. Cobalion, Terrakion, Virizion, and Keldeo. All odd combinations of typings all over, but the fighting type is more or less a game design mechanic here, rather than actually kind of being what they are. It's complicated. In the Pokemon
first one's like very
world,
refined.
Evil uses Dark, as you learned in the last video, not Dark type. Check it out here. And what's good against Evil? The Justice system, or Law. But there's no Law type, at least not yet. Besides, it would just be a bunch of Officer Jenny clones, but in different hats. Gotta catch them all. No, in Pokemon, fighting is the law. The fair, the disciplined, and well-trained. The just, you could say. And this quartet is adequately named the Swords of Justice, being based off of the Three Musketeers and What's-His-Face.
D'Artagnan.
Fighting aptly fits them. In fact, it also plays a bit into Chestnut as well. A Knight of Justice, you could say. And while not the best reason, it's a lot better than the next few Pokemon in this next category, which is still kind of the previous category, but next up is just the
Miscellaneous.
Pokemon that
Still.
I don't know why these are fighting type Pokemon. Realistically, they are just ripped and muscular.
Go,
They
go!
like to punch things. Some do have insane feats of power, but the reasonings just kind of fall flat onto why they're fighting type. Either that, or I happen to forget about them until the end because they're so boring. First up on the no reason fighting
Ouch.
type list is Mega Mewtwo X. I am not sure why he's fighting type other than
Mewtwo's
fighting
boring?
psychic is a very decent type combo, making
Mega
it
Mewtwo
significantly
X?
stronger than it already is. Mega Mewtwo X now boasts the highest attack stat in the game currently.
Oh, wow.
It took all of its brain and converted it into brawn. I guess mind over matter isn't the case. And if you can just will yourself ripped, I've got some willing to do later. Another normal fighting type is the new Stuffle and Beware line. These red panda plushies are mean. That is to say, they love a good tussle. Side note, personally, I think that normal fighting type goes
wants to give you a
against
big hug.
normal typing, but that's for another video on normal type Pokemon. So I'll just focus on the fighting type for now. Deemed the most dangerous Pokemon in the Alola region by its
Really?
Pokedex entry, you should definitely beware of this Bee-Bear. Even the seemingly small Stuffle is able to knock out a pro wrestler with ease thanks to its strength.
They look so
And
cute.
according to the Pokedex, it boasts enough power to split large trees in half. That is some impressive strength. In fact, that's the reason for
Also,
its
the
fighting
organized
type.
rare releases in odor.
According to Game Freak, probably. But
Okay.
it really shouldn't be fighting type. It's not known to have a special style or even train. It's just an angry bear that hates being touched. But it does say in its Pokedex entry that when it gets angry and flails about, its arms and legs could knock out a pro wrestler. So it mentions wrestling, so I guess that's where it gets it. I mean, if you can beat a fighter, then you must be a fighter, right?
Sure.
It's not like any other non-fighting type Pokemon are strong whatsoever. Other ripped Pokemon that don't make too much sense include Poliwrath, Mankey, Primeape, and Passimian. None of these
Is that a football
Pokemon
player?
show any of the finesse or technique that I've been
Yeah.
talking about.
Rugby?
They do have the raw power to say, but one is an overgrown tadpole and the others are just angry monkeys with fancy footwork and a rugby-playing simian.
Rugby, okay, there you go.
Truly the weak link in the fighting typing. But now that's not to say they are weaklings. Poliwrath is able to turn a boulder into dust with one punch, which is why it's on the fighting type list, I guess. In fact, all of these Pokemon are just insanely strong, and I guess strength equals fighting type. Krogunk and Toxicroak are kind of oddballs as well. Why are they fighting type? Well, that's a little clouded in mystery. The only thing really linking them is that they like to punch Brock all the time. After all, punching is the way they deliver their poison. I mean venom. Their venom. I watch my own videos. Yeah, they punch their opponents and deliver their toxic cocktail of death. And we all know by this point that if any Pokemon punches things, it obviously must be the fighting type. It's not like any non-fighting type Pokemon can learn punching moves.
Jigglypuff!
No, sir. And finally, we get to the last two Pokemon, or should I say Ultra Beasts? No? Because the Ultra Beasts are just Pokemon? I don't know anymore. Buzzswole and Pheromosa, two version-exclusive UBs that share many properties except look. I'm sure you can guess why Buzzswole is a fighting type. I mean, look at those.
Look at
Do bugs even have biceps? Well, look at that bug. It is ripped. You could even say it's swole, bruh. Based off of bodybuilders and muscle man competitors, Buzzswole gains its fighting type because of show muscles rather than raw strength muscles, yet again. Now, the one that I'm still trying to think of a reason why, even as I voice this video, is Pheromosa.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even have a clue why it would be fighting type other than the fact that Buzzswole is fighting, and it's the other version's exclusive Pokemon to replace Buzzswole. Pheromosa is known for the ability to run at incredible speeds, upwards of 120 miles an hour, which is fast.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
doesn't contribute to its fighting type. In fact, come to think of it, maybe that's the reason why. It's the flight part of the saying fight or flight, where Buzzswole is the fight,
He is like,
Pheromosa is the flight. But then
I was
she's
thinking
not
that.
flying type.
I was just about to say it.
I don't know. She kicks with her feet, and in order to punch or kick, you have to be fighting type, right? No? Well, then I have no idea. These Pokemon here really shouldn't be fighting type, or at the very least, have very weak reasons for being so. And there you have it. The reasons fighting type Pokemon should or really shouldn't be fighting type.
I like that one at the end. That was it was just very interesting, the design of it all. Like,
For Pheromosa.
yeah, for Pheromosa.
I think that's what her name was.
Yeah.
I like the idea of, or the possibility of it being that she is the flight to the Pokemon preceding her's fight, to make them sort of like two halves of the
Mm-hmm.
of the same coin. It almost made me think of like, oh, they could work together like Cloak and Dagger, you know?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
They could be a team that way. I enjoyed these. I think part of the fun was well, all Pokemon fight, and some of these don't really have a good reason to be fighter types.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just, in the past videos, there's been, by and large, really solid evidence as to why certain Pokemon are in certain categories. Often it's quite obvious even. So this is kind of like the first one that we came across where it was like, I don't know why they're a fighter, but they are, so we'll try to
We're going with
justify it with this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of fun. I mean, not that it necessarily made me super better versed in Pokemon, but it was fun to kind of watch, or hear at least, Loxodon and Noggin have to kind of like tap dance around they got thrown in here, so let's make sense of it.
Yeah, he had a lot of like pauses throughout here where he was just kind of like little asides that that he did. And I mean, Monkferno, great look, great name.
Great name.
Yeah, just that was probably my favorite one. And then the one that I like, it caught my attention right away. It was like the ghost one, the ghost fighting. One. I can't remember its name, but yeah. And then the third one that we just said that whose name again?
Pheromosa.
That I will never remember.
I liked the one that they like tied to Bruce Lee, and that was specializing in Taekwondo, because I took Taekwondo as a kid. So there was a part of me that's like, ooh, this is really fun.
You could have been that Pokemon if you just stuck with it.
I only stuck with it. And then I liked the other one, which was the Jackie Chan one.
Yeah.
So I liked the sort of like nod to the people who have basically made that sport famous in a lot of ways, that specific martial arts style.
Yeah. Or you know, when Champion's saying like, you know, four-armed Mike Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be just, I think 1,000 punches in 2 seconds was it that he could do?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, which is just insane. And those two cute cuddly ones I thought were really nice. And then all of a sudden they're like the most evil of all the fighting type Pokemon. You don't want to piss them off. They can like chop a tree in half with their fists.
That wasn't the panda one, right? That looked so
mischievous? It was, no, it wasn't the mischievous panda. The mischievous panda. No, that wasn't
with his
that
little
one.
like green tongue sticking out.
Yeah, exactly. He looked like he's in the mob too.
I was gonna say, yeah,
Monster
he's
Panda.
definitely like dealing some stuff or something.
He's in with Mob Boss Mouse and Dragon Ball Super.
Yeah, okay.
He's one of his henchmen.
I could see that. I could see them belong in the same universe for sure.
Yeah, exactly. No, they were like the pink ones. Towards
the
end.
red panda ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were vicious.
And red pandas are so cute. Like, I always love the videos of red pandas. When they see something that scares them, they like stand up and like put their arms up.
Oh, make themselves big.
To make themselves big. So like if they get scared, that's how they respond to it, to try to intimidate the thing that scares them. So I was like, oh, they look so cute and cuddly. And then no, they were actually quite aggressive.
Yeah, Bethany does the same thing when she sees a spider in the bathroom. She's like, baby, spider! And I gotta go crush it. But she gets scared of it, but
I've done better with spiders.
You have.
It's the roaches now and they don't get intimidated.
No, they do
Not
not.
that the spiders did either, but I like to think that they did.
Let us know what you thought about this down below in the comments. What fighting Pokemon are your favorites? And you can check out our playlist for all of our Pokemon reactions. Thanks for watching, but just keep in mind
That our reaction is definitely not definitive.